Beloved, this is your Heritage Moment 33. Awesome. The diaspora has taken us far and wide, yet God has maintained our heritage even when it seemed to be languishing. For this reason, we can truly say that God is awesome in all his ways. The awesomeness of God is manifested in the awesomeness of his creation. One of the crowning jewels of his creation is the mystic and scholar Howard Thurman. He was named by Life magazine as one of the 12 greatest preachers of the 20th century, and by Ebony magazine as one of the 50 most important figures in African American history. The first dean of Rankin Chapel at Howard University, Howard Thurman, was born in Daytona Beach, Florida in 1900. He was raised in the midst of the segregation by his grandmother, who had been a slave and who had a most profound influence over his life. Blacks were not offered an education beyond the seventh grade in Daytona Beach. However, his family was able to gather enough funds to send him to Jacksonville, Florida, to complete his high school education. This effort was almost derailed when Howard Thurman was asked to pay an extra fee to send his suitcases on the train because he had no money left after purchasing his ticket. Feeling somewhat defeated, Thurman sat on the steps and started to cry when a stranger, a black man dressed in overalls, happened by, asked of his distress, and paid the cost of the suitcases. Howard Thurman never knew who this man was, but would be eternally grateful to him. After completing high school, Howard Thurman entered Morehouse College and graduated as valedictorian in 1923. 2 years later, he became an ordained Baptist minister, receiving a graduate theological degree from Colgate Rochester Theological Seminary in New York. He led a group of African Americans on a trip to meet Mahatma Gandhi in 1935 to 36. During said meeting, Gandhi challenged him to rethink the idea of Christianity as a religion used by whites with the images of a white Christ to keep blacks in their place. Later, Thurman would share his conversation with his students, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Reverend James Farmer. In 1944, Thurman founded and pastored the Church for the Fellowship of All People in San Francisco, one of the most prominent interracial, interfaith churches in the nation. His congregation grew to 250, half white, and the rest African American, Chinese, Japanese, and Filipino. The church had many celebrity associates, including Eleanor Roosevelt and Josephine Baker, as well as a global network of believers. Dr. Thurman left Fellowship Church in 1953 to become the first African American dean of Marsh Chapel at Boston University until his retirement in 1965. While at Boston, Thurman started an intercultural dialogue named The Search for Common Ground, sought to bring people of diverse backgrounds closer together. Thurman returned to San Francisco and became the director of the Howard Thurman Educational Trust and minister emeritus at Fellowship Church, dying in 1981. Howard Thurman was a man of many gifts and talents and a heart for God. He was an extraordinary preacher and captivating orator. He was also a prolific writer, penning 120 works, including his highly acclaimed book, Jesus and the Disinherited, in which he expounded on the idea of Jesus as a liberating figure. In his Footprints of a Dream, published in 1959, Thurman wrote, quote, "The movement of the Spirit of God in the hearts of men often calls them to act against the spirit of their times, or causes them to anticipate a spirit which is yet in the making. In a moment of dedication, they're given wisdom and courage to dare a deed that challenges and to kindle a hope that inspires, end quote. African Americans are a noble people, anointed by God to exemplify the awesomeness of God's creation. Remember, don't worship without your heritage moment.